What's happening, folks? Welcome back to the channel, Sports, Life and Politics TV. I'm Samuel Capo, YouTube's #1 couch detective, and I'm here for the news. And here today, I'm going to be going over this clip of the Mississippi Goon Squad. It was a small terror group within the sheriff's department in a smaller city next to Jackson, Mississippi, where they were supposedly brought together to stop the fentanyl crisis and crime that is happening within rural areas of America. And I've covered this about rural areas in America and across the United States in general of the fentanyl opioid crisis that is happening within the white community. And there's a huge problem within a lot of sheriff's departments nationwide, and I've covered this time and time again, of gangs being formed inside of these sheriffs and police departments. And a lot of time, these gangs tend to target Negroes. This is why I say people like Candace Owens and these black conservative channels and these super black Republicans, I don't mind you calling out BS on the black side and saying this, that, and the third. Sometimes it be true. But what happens is it becomes one-sided. And if you notice, those people never cover these type of cases where 6 men, and believe me, it's no coincidence that the number is 6, for these satanic and sadistic human beings creating like a cult-like environment within the police department. Now, I've covered this case, and in that case, I talked about white supremacy before. And white supremacy, on its own face value, is satanic and sadistic. Even the KKK, they would burn crosses. Even in the Jim Crow era and, the early 1900s, 1920s, they would have picnics, which is short for pick a nigga, and hang them and lynch them and burn them alive and then cut off their fingers and toes and sell them and keep them as keepsakes. And all type of sick and satanic and sadistic things would happen with these police officers. None of that shit has really ever changed. The only thing is went underground and they hide it a lot more now. But nothing has ever really truly changed. Now, there were 2 black men that these 6 police officers tortured and sexually abused, but because they said the 2 black men was in the house of a white woman. Now, on a video I covered over a year ago, when I covered these guys, I asked the question, did the white woman set them up? Because all of a sudden, I don't hear nothing about the white woman. Where was the white woman during this whole thing of all this torture that was happening and going on? We never heard nothing from it. But I'm going to get this video started, and we're going to dig into this case a little bit and kind of, go over some of the details.
Mississippi, 2 more police officers were given lengthy sentences today for their role in a series of brutal attacks, including against 2 black men. They're part of a group of former officers who are being sentenced this week after pleading guilty to horrifying charges that include torture and sexual assault. John Yang has more.
Anna, a federal judge in Mississippi, has just handed down the harshest sentence yet in a startling case of law enforcement misconduct. 40 years in prison for the 4th former deputy of the self-proclaimed Goon Squad of the Rankin County, Mississippi Sheriff's Department. A total of 6 former deputies have pleaded guilty. Federal prosecutors say that for nearly 2 decades, they barged into homes in the middle of the night, handcuffing and torturing occupants for information or confessions. Current charges.
Let me say this, and look at that. That looked like the Blair Witch Project. Look how scary. That shit looks like where you go to get lynched. If I know damn well them 2 Negroes were out in them woods. Oh, no. Come on, black man. You got to know better than that. And where they at was predominantly white. And if you don't know, Jackson, Mississippi is predominantly black. So obviously there's a color line and a color barrier that's been there for probably over 100 plus years at this particular point in time. So, but yeah, let me say fair use. I'm using this PBS News Hour clip, but you get yourself caught up in this as a black man. Do these black men have any accountability for this? Very little, but I do give them, man, listen to me, man. Damn, I'm from the South. There's certain areas in the South, you just as a Negro, you don't get yourself caught up out there. Does it make it right what these men did? Absolutely not. These men are sadistic and satanic. But the reason why I'm saying you stay out of this shit so you're not with these sadistic and satanic human beings. You don't want to even come into contact with them over no white woman. But look at that scary scene right there. That looked like where you go to get torture.
From January 2023 home invasion, the residence of Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker. The officers repeatedly shot them with tasers, sexually assaulted them with a sex toy, and shot Jenkins in the face, nearly killing him. Parker spoke to reporters after one of the sentencing hearings.
None already lived to be erased, and I can't take it back. I relive this every day.
The years of brutal misconduct was documented by an investigation by Mississippi Today and the New York Times local investigations.
And let me say this. Did the sheriff's department, as far as the head sheriff and everybody in between know about this shit? 100%. Allegedly. 100% allegedly. They all knew about this and we're in on this and they're okay. But the problem with this is these guys went off the books, off the record, and did their own thing because this is a satanic cult. That's why it was ritualistic sexual abuse. That's why them black men were saying these people were demonic and all type of shit that was coming out about this case. But none of it shocked me because when I first heard about the case over a year ago and they was talking, it might have been a little longer than that, probably a little longer over a year ago. But when I first started hearing about it, when I covered the case, I said to myself, yeah, these guys are sadistic and satanic and they Luciferians. So these black men got caught up in some shit that should never, ever, ever have happened to them. But I don't know if this was their house or they were in somebody else's house. Now, if they was in a white woman's house in this particular county where they wasn't from, you shouldn't did that. But if they was in their own house, that makes it 100 times more egregious. It was already egregious anyway, just coming in there. But if they were in her house, I mean, you was playing with fire because everybody knows down south, especially if you're in Jackson, Mississippi, the racial history down there, like these, and nobody's naive to that. So let's keep the clip going.
Brian Howes, an investigative reporter in Mississippi Today, who was part of this reporting team. Brian, the sort of the severity of this behavior and the fact that it went on so long really is eye-grabbing. So it's very startling. Tell us how this self-proclaimed Goon Squad came about. How did it get started? How big was it? How did they pick the people they targeted?
Thanks, Sean. Well, it's unclear how the Goon Squad was actually started, but we do know that this pattern of behavior involved a core group of deputies stretching back nearly 20 years. They chose their targets based on these people's alleged crimes. They mainly went after folks that they suspected of dealing or possessing methamphetamine or other drugs. Then, after they found them, they would burst into their homes or pull them over while they were driving and begin these interrogations that often involved anywhere from repeated tasings to waterboarding to burning, you name it.
I mean, this has been going on for some time, so 2 decades.
So they were doing CIA operative tactics and when you waterboarding somewhere, that's some shit that they do to you when they catch you in Saudi Arabia. I mean, that's wild that you burning and tasing and waterboarding people. Like this shit had gotten basically all the way out of control. And it had to be reeled in because they were going above and beyond what they were supposed to be doing. I'm pretty sure they had already been doing that, but at one point they were trying to do it in the name of the law. Like they find drugs on you, then they arrest you, then here comes the torture. But they had got so bad to where they just burst into people's home unannounced.
How many other cases are there out there, do you think?
Well, we don't know how many cases there are out there, but we interviewed over 50 people who claimed they experienced or witnessed torture at the hands of Rankin County deputies. Of those, we were able to corroborate 17 torture incidents involving 20 victims dating back 18 years.
So So these guys been together for 20 years. So the culture, they was building up the culture for a very long time. And I had covered the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department of the Bandinos, a gang that was in the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. Also another gang in Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, the Executioners. So they have the tattoos and all that shit. They basically a gang, the same as these guys right here. And you can see this is the top cop. This is the top sheriff in this county. And he plays like he doesn't know, but he is the guy who orchestrates this whole thing. But he does it from the outside, where it's tough to really pin it on him. But believe you me, they orchestrating this shit for sure. He's a white supremacist too, 100% alleged. This is also a white supremacist. So they're coming together and doing this shit, but his people had gotten out of control.
Deputies. Of those, we were able to corroborate 17 torture incidents involving 20 victims dating back 18 years.
The sheriff is resisting calls to resign. How high up did knowledge about this go? How senior supervisors were aware of this?
You're right, John. The sheriff has resisted calls to resign and has claimed numerous times that he has no knowledge of his deputies' actions. But
And him saying he has no knowledge is impossible. It's impossible because they were getting so many complaints that it's impossible for you not to know it. The only reason he hasn't lost his job yet because they're all in cahoots together at the top. They all knew about this shit because the complaints was coming in. When the complaints come in, there's no hiding it all of a sudden. We all know. So, eventually, something's got to come to head with this. But the reason why he hasn't went yet, because if he goes, then the person who above him is in trouble. They might have to go. And then you know what I mean? So it's a domino effect. So they're trying to hold out as long as they can. But it is Mississippi, and that's the only reason he's not going yet.
Were that some of the highest ranking deputies at the sheriff's department were involved and actively partaking in
Of course.
torture incidents. And we spoke to multiple people.
And these white supremacists are so sick and sadistic, they would record this shit and watch this. Some of these people were masturbating. Yeah, all type of white, man. Some of this shit is sinister, man.
Who claimed they were tortured by deputies who said that they filed complaints with the department, which should have gone to the sheriff, and in some cases even reached out directly to him to notify him of his deputies' actions.
Well, what does this say?
Yeah, so not only were they sending complaints through the proper channels, they also was reaching out to the top sheriff directly. So, like I said, there's no way it's impossible for him not to know. Impossible.
Culture of the department.
Well, it says that there's potentially a deeply ingrained culture of violent misconduct at the County Sheriff's Department. This culture has actually been referenced several times in the sentencing hearings this week by some of the deputies themselves, who themselves acknowledged that they were indoctrinated into this culture and became a part of it as they went on at the sheriff's department.
Well, yeah, they're indoctrinated to an extent, but a lot of these people were raised up. You don't have to indoctrinate a person who's raised from childhood to practice and believe in white supremacy. Do I think white people are supreme? Absolutely not. But the point is, they were raised and indoctrinated from childhood. So it wasn't like they went into the sheriff's department and they came in and they was just these super loving people, kind and loved the whole world and wanted to hold hands with everybody. Of course not. These people hated everybody except white people and maybe Asian women. I mean, not white men are, but outside of that, they didn't like nobody, man. Period, point blank. And they most definitely 100% didn't like no Negroes. For sure. Hated they guts and wanted to see them harm come to them in any way, shape, or form they could at any time and as long and as much as possible.
The Rankin County is majority white. It sits right next to Jackson, which has one of the highest percentages of black population of any good-sized city in America. To what extent is there a racial dimension to this?
We found that the majority of the alleged victims who were tortured by Goon Squad members were actually white,
and of course that makes sense because the county where they're at, considering they were trying to stop methamphetamines, majority of those people were going to be white. There's no doubt about that shit. I talked about this in the case where I was talking about the Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon got so bad in the Oregon rural areas and Washington up there, it got so bad that at one point they had decriminalized drug usage and all the shit they was doing, like it was legal to use drugs in the street network. It's gotten so bad they had to recriminalize it. Because remember when black people was doing crack, I talk about this all the time. They criminalized it to the umpteenth degree. They came over 3 strikes laws and they was throwing black people in jail for very long sentences over drugs. White people became the biggest drug abusers on the planet, and all of a sudden they decriminalized it, but it's actually working in reverse. You have to really be stern and hard, stiff sentences on these drug addicts, because drug addicts are committing a massive amount of crime. And another thing, when they say black people commit all this crime, that's not true. We don't lead in crime no more. That's just not true. White people are committing far more crime than we are, and I ain't talking about just because white people outnumber us. I'm talking about even if you average out the number per person, per capita, however you want to do the math, it's still way more than black people. They just have decriminalized the drug abuse. Everybody knows the only way a drug addict is going to get drugs is by breaking the law. So they're breaking the law at an astronomical number. White women are having abortions at an astronomical number. They have fucking private doctors, private physicians. They fixing the numbers. It's common sense. You say, how do I know? I'm gonna tell you again, because all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they overchanged Roe versus Wade. All of a sudden, they decriminalize it. Now they have to recriminalize it. That's letting you know it's out of control.
That's because we are looking at a majority white county. However, when people of color came forward and said that they were tortured, there was often a racial aspect to the torture. They were called racial slurs. They were told to go back to Jackson, which is a common phrase, referring to Jackson and how many people at the department and in Rankin County see the city as a source of crime and corruption.
And that's the sickness of white supremacists. They talking about the source of crime and corruption is Jackson, and they are the most corrupt, most biggest criminals in all of Mississippi. That's the most unbelievable part. That's how you know white supremacy is sadistic and satanic, and it's a cult, because it brainwashes these people. While you committing the most heinous acts and crimes, you talking about all the criminals are in Jackson, Mississippi. You have to be sick and sadistic and have completely have had your mind wiped to think such a thing when you're the biggest criminal on the planet at this particular juncture in history.
In other counties in Mississippi?
It's hard to say. We do know that across Mississippi, sheriff's departments have very little to no oversight. Our team, Alyssa Daly and Jerry Mitchell, have uncovered other accusations of sexual assault by sheriffs
Of course.
different departments. And so it's clear here that we have an issue of accountability with sheriffs generally in Mississippi.
This has been going on for 2 decades. Complaints went to the sheriff's department to no avail. How did this escape the notice of statewide officials, of federal officials?
That's a great question, John.
I could answer that question. The reason why that was to be able to escape, and it wasn't because it was number one, it was dope fiend white people who was dealing in methamphetamines, which is white trash, which only in white society is just barely one step above black people. And the other reason is because it was black people. So you had the white trash of America, what they consider their trash, and you had black people, no matter what status the black person is, they consider all of us trash. So that's why it kept floating on and on, because nobody listens to a meth head and nobody's listening to the Negro until the shit just becomes so abundantly clear. And these guys were just like, they were just, over the top and outrageous with, just busting in somebody's home. Like, they was crazy.
I'd love to know that myself. We do know that a state investigation into the incident involving Michael Jenkins and Eddie Parker is sort of what initiated all of this in the first place. But as far as we know, so far, state and federal officials only recently became aware of the conduct of the Rankin County Sheriff's Department.
And the trials that have been going on, the sentencing has all been in federal court. Are any local county officials, the county prosecutor, looking into this?
Yes, all of the deputies who face sentencing in federal court this week will also face another round of state sentencing in the coming weeks.
Well, that's good. Fantastic. I'm glad that these guys are facing even more time. So somehow, if you get a winning appeal in federal, you still got the state to back it up. That's a fantastic thing. But we got one more little 1 minute clip, and we're gonna hear from some of the lawyers and some of the people involved in the case, and they're gonna let you know what they think about it.
Let this be a strict warning to all gangs in police department.
And you hear what he said, all gangs in police department, because it's a lot of gangs in police departments, especially in sheriff's departments. It's like when you come in there, it's like a ritualistic initiation. It's a no snitching policy. They frown upon snitching because look, some people actually go into law enforcement to actually try to enforce the law and protect and serve. But when they get in there, it's kind of like politics. They understand all of a sudden it's a cesspool and it's political and it's a bunch of things that you have to do and have to keep to yourself that you didn't get involved in this for that. But if you want to be involved in this, then this is the things that you have to do. So he nailed it on here. All gangs.
All across America. Let this be a strict warning to all rogue police officers in the United States of America that you will not get light sentences, that you will not be let off easy. So these acts by Daniel Opdak, they were sick, twisted, severely affected Mr. Jenkins and Mr. Parker.
Let me say this. Almost all white supremacists are in some way, shape, or form indulging in some kind of homoerotic behavior. Like with these men, they were using sex toys and shit on these men while they were cuffed. And they were doing some sadistic things in that house. And a lot of them was sexually ritualistic and abusive in nature. So that's why you see them black men crying. That was like a form of buck breaking, of breaking black men. That shit, man. Hopefully in jail they get their just due. They get a little buck broken.
Again, they all come from the lack of leadership of the Rankin County Sheriff's Department under the leadership of Brian Bailey.
To see Christian Denton, who Eddie described as the devil, and to see the devil get his due on this day, you just have to say, "Oh, glory to God."
I agree. All glory to God that these men actually got some justice. But I have to figure that out. Was it their house they busted into, or were they at a woman's house and he busted into the woman's house? I would like to know that. Either way, it doesn't make no sense. Everything these men get, they deserve. I wish it was a little bit longer sentence. I wish it was a full life sentence. Yeah, they'll give them the full 100. Yeah, so there's no chance of ever getting out. But this is already a federal case. And now they have the state charges next. They've gotten 40 years federal. Everybody know when you get those type of times federally, you supposed to do about 85% of that. So 40, you ain't get out to probably about 38. That's a good thing. That's fantastic. By that time, these guys will be completely old, washed up, and done for. But, white supremacy is something that's practiced. It has a lot of homosexuality behavior involved in it. There's no doubt about that. It's sadistic. It's devilish. It's a lot of depravity that's involved in it. And unfortunately for them black men, they have to deal with that and they have to endure that. But thank God they're still alive. They will be getting compensated fully to the umpteenth degree. There's no doubt about that. But these men have to face justice now. And that's a fantastic and a beautiful thing. There's no doubt about that. But I just wanted to go over this clip because I covered this case a while back. And in that case, I told you how sadistic these was. And after that, one of the men was like the devil himself. No doubt about that. But, I appreciate you guys tuning in. This has been Sports, Life and Politics TV. I'm Samuel Koppel, YouTube's #1 couch detective. I'm here for the news. Hit that like, hit that subscribe. I just took your ass, and I wish all 6 of these boys got the death penalty ride. Peace.